The title of this video may appear like clickbait. Yet actually this is a shortened version of a document from the Organization Department of the German Army's Generalstab in July 1944. Now the original title of the document was Vergleich des Feldheeres 1917 mit dem Feldheer 1944, which means comparison of the Field Army 1917 with the Field Army 1944. So this video is basically a visualization of selected parts of the document with some additional information and context. The document itself had also a quite interesting date, namely the 20th of July 1944, which was the day of the best known attempted assassination of Hitler. I don't know if this is a coincidence or not. After all, the officers behind the assassination wanted to prevent an unconditional surrender similar to 1918, and in their assumption, stable front lines were an important foundation for any negotiations. Now you probably want to know what is the difference between army and field army. Well, the field army is part of the army that does most of the killing and dying. One could say the field army is the army out in the field. For some contrast, other parts of the army would be the reserve army or the occupation army. So since we got that covered, let's get started. In terms of front lines, the Western Front in 1917 had a length of 650 kilometers, whereas in 1944 it was 151 kilometers. Yet this only covered the invasion front, not the coastlines. The Italian front was 450 kilometers in 1917 and 281 in 1944. Yet the huge difference was on the Eastern Front, with 1,700 kilometers in the First World War versus 2,720 kilometers in 1944, whereas the later number does not include the front lines in northern Finland and Norway. In total, the length of the front in 1917 was 2,800 kilometers, whereas in 1944 the front line was 3,152 kilometers. Now let's look at the numbers of divisions next. On the Western Front in 1917 there were 148 German divisions, whereas in 1944 there were 60 divisions. Of those, 22 divisions were on the invasion front. On the Italian front there were 54 Austro-Hungarian divisions in World War I, whereas in 1944 there were 22 German divisions and 1 foreign division, for a total of 23 divisions. On the Eastern Front in 1917 the Germans were probably not up to modern diversity regulations, but still a quite mixed composition with 82 German, 43 Austrian-Hungarian, 3 Bulgarian and 4 Turkish divisions. In 1944 there were 128 German and 36 divisions of the Allies. Thus in total 132 and 164 divisions on the Eastern Fronts. If we add all these numbers together, we get 334 divisions for 1917 and 247 divisions in 1944. Thus, there is a total difference of 87 divisions. Additionally, you can clearly see that in World War II, the Eastern Front was the most important front line, whereas in the Great War it was the Western Front. Now the total numbers of men in the Field Army are from December of the previous year, because in the document there are only the numbers given for December 1943 and the number for the First World War is missing, but thankfully someone provided proper resources for the First World War. Now the total number of men in the Field Army in December 1916 were almost exactly 4.8 million, whereas in December 1943 it were about 4.3 million. Note that this difference is considerably smaller than the gap of 87 divisions, because these numbers only account for the manpower of the German Field Army and not the Allies. Now since we know the total numbers of men and the front lengths, let's see how many German soldiers were available for each front kilometer. Although note that the total numbers of men are from December 1916 and 1943, whereas the front lengths are from July of the following years. So this part is more about giving you a general idea on the situation than historical accuracy. For the final stages of the First World War there was a total front length of 2,800 kilometers, which had around 4.8 million men stationed there, whereas for the final stages of the Second World War there was a total front line of 3,152 kilometers with about 4.27 million men. Thus we get 1,714 men per kilometer in World War I versus 1,355 men in World War II. Note that these numbers are only for the German soldiers and don't include the manpower of all Axis forces in Europe, which was considerably higher in World War I, thus the difference in men per front kilometer was even more significant. Thank you for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. And see you next time.